Amazing, and we're live. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Impressions webinar on the future of paid search. I'm Greg from Impression, and I'm joined here by Luke from Emma, who's very graciously agreed to join an Impression webinar. So I'll be speaking first about future-proofing your paid search, followed by Luke shortly after. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll answer them kind of together at the end, rather than kind of me talking, then me answering questions, then Luke talking, then him answering questions. If you ask them now, we'll address them all at the end. These will also be recorded and the slides will be up on the Impression site afterwards. So if anyone is keen and wants to relive the fun and the glory that we'll probably be talking about for the next hour, then there'll be some blog posts going live about that. But for now, I reckon we should get started straight away. So I am talking first, and I'll just share my screen now. Awesome. I'm going to assume that people can see my screen. It's been a year and a half of doing this. I feel like I don't need to ask that question anymore. Cool. So I'm talking about future-proofing your paid search. So a little bit about me first. There I am, Greg. I'm a senior paid media strategist at Impression, clearly in need of a new photo, apparently. If you guys are interested in kind of anything that I'm talking about, want to discuss it later, I only have 20 minutes and I can genuinely talk about this topic for about 2 hours. If you try any of the kind of the strategies or the ideas that I present, please feel free to reach out to me on either my Twitter, which is GregPPC, not to be confused with PPC Greg, my LinkedIn, or if you really want to be really invasive, then there's my work email there as well. Please drop me a message, as I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts and your questions after this as well. So I've got over 3.5 years experience in paid media, specializing in search, display and video, and paid strategy, and I'm a manager in the recently named Best Large PPC Agency in Europe, PPC Agency of the Year, Biddable Team of the Year, as of a few days ago, 2 years in a row now, according to various awards ceremonies over the past year, none of which actually had an in-person ceremony, so really, who cares anyway? A fun fact about me is that I love pina coladas and getting caught in a good old account restructure. Cool, so enough of that nonsense. What am I actually talking about today? So I'll be talking about 3 things. First, I'm going to be having a look at what's changed and what's changing in PPC. Obviously, there's been a huge amount going on over the last 6 months to a year to 2 years. And I'll be talking about kind of what they are and how we can adapt to them. Then I'll be talking about structuring our search campaigns in 2021, going forward into 2022 and the future as well. And then finally, how to optimize in a smart structure, which I'll be presenting in slide 2. So what's happening? Or help, I can't see my search queries. In September, so first I'll be talking about search query data. So in September, there were changes to the search term reports, which meant that users could not see significant amounts of data. Google made it so that only around 80% of click searches were actually visible in the search term reports, and the amount of visible impressions kind of even less than that. As you can see from the screen grab there, only around 80% of those clicks were visible in the search term report, and around a third of the impressions there. That raises questions around kind of the classic PPC tasks of negative keyword management and keyword mining to expand your account. So how do we adapt to this? So what we need to do here is we need to stop focusing and relying on small variances in search terms to drive splitting strategy. So what we need to do is we need to use that 80% that we can see to guide our strategy and focus more on the context which we're seeing from those keywords, as well as the audiences which we can derive from those keywords and the keyword themes that we're seeing in order to drive our growth instead. The 20% of clicks that we're seeing are probably clicks which are searched once and never searched again. I think there's that classic statistic from Google that something like 26% of searches every single day are brand new, and therefore will likely never be searched again. So focusing on kind of small variances in keywords isn't the best way to drive strategy of adding long tail individual keywords which won't ever be searched again, kind of reduces the amount of data density that you've got in the account and makes it a lot more difficult to manage. So what we need to do is we need to use that 80% to guide our strategy, focus on the context, understand our audience, and the following keywords therefore should be relevant. If you're worried about negative keyword mining, anything which is irrelevant, which is still worth removing, will still appear in the search term reports for now. However, it's a negative key. If it's an irrelevant search term which is only ever searched once, then removing it as a negative keyword will probably not really move the account kind of in any way either way. So we need to focus on that 80% in the search queries. That brings me to the keyword itself. So the way users search is changing. The statistic in 2016 that only 46% of searches were actually more than 2 words long. And I imagine in 2021, that is actually a lot more. And the reason this is that Google has learned what users want to see as it's become a better product, a better search engine. For example, different users will see different results for the same keyword. Here's me searching cool desk on the right, on the top result being kind of my Google profile, and the bottom an incognito profile showing nonsense desks that I would never be interested in. So Google knows the user signals that we search when we search it, which is why when we search a shorter keyword rather than a long tail keyword, we'll see different results because of the information that Google has about us. Google also preempts what we search before we search it, and mobile searches differ due to the smaller size of the screen. So this move towards more user signal focused bidding is needed, where we focus on a user's likeliness to buy, i.e. their stage of the funnel that they have, rather than individual long keywords themselves, which traditionally might have been what we do in our PPC strategies, having big long lists of thousands of keywords, most of which probably not searched again, and most of which we can capture by looking at the user intent of a shorter query itself. There's a link here to a great blog, I think by Kirk Williams, who talks about thinking of keywords as topics and categories rather than an actual keyword. So that brings me on to match types. I'm sure everyone is kind of aware and very frustrated of the various match type changes that have occurred kind of, I would say, very recently over the last 3 months, but even over kind of the last year or two. Starting with exact and phrase. Exact is no longer exact. Phrase is no longer a phrase. So Google have brought close variants, which were previously plurals and misspellings, and are now kind of search terms which are synonymous with the intent of the keyword. So they're now a lot closer to broad match. What this means is that the traditional style of PPC campaign splits, splitting campaigns by like match type or ad groups by match type, it makes that management quite difficult and possibly not worth it. If your exact and phrase keywords are kind of being brought together to be a similar sort of keyword, then splitting them out is kind of splitting your data into 2 different pots and kind of duplicating the work that you're doing itself. We also need to get prepared for keyword match types to become kind of more interchangeable in their similarity, and maybe in the future irrelevant entirely. So again, let's focus on the context of the keyword here. Another good blog, which is linked there, which I'd recommend reading about keywords as a context. So that keyword, context of the keyword, is what Google has attempted to introduce with close variants, and those changes and variations mirror changes in the way that people search, i.e. The keyword itself, which I talked about a few slides ago. So if you're still worried about variances in exact and phrase, we can still add the key differences in intent with negative keywords. Again, if it's different enough that it's pulling a significant amount of queries into the report, then we'll still be able to see it, and we'll still be able to add negative keywords. But be careful not to overfilter your keywords, for example, splitting out plurals, misspellings, and so on, as that splits your data into multiple different pots and makes your life harder, both as a manager and also for Google's algorithms once you apply the right strategies. That brings me on to Bmm Keywords. I think anyone who works in PPC is pretty aware that you won't be able to create Bmm, broad match modified keywords, from July anymore. So kind of since February 2021, phrase match keywords have started incorporating elements of Bmm keywords. So phrase is also changing to be a little bit broad, and they're meeting somewhere in the middle. So what that means is the example that Google gives is that the query moving services London to Manchester, that would have captured the search query affordable moving services London to Manchester in the past. Phrase match would have. And BMM would have captured London corporate moving services to Manchester, a similar sort of intent, but with London kind of put further back in the search query. But it also would have captured the wrong intent, which was moving services Manchester to London. The updated phrase match, which incorporates elements of BMM, does what phrase match used to do, but it also shows ads for search queries which Google deems to have the same intent. So it incorporates elements where the order of the words in the keyword isn't necessarily gospel, whereas it used to be with phrase match. Cool. What that means for other variations of broad keywords, so keywords that partially use the plus notation, which is synonymous with BMM, will act like phrase words straight away. So for example, plus moving services will just be kind of act like phrase moving services kind of straight away. Google says that the process will be complete kind of at the end of April 2021. So we probably have started seeing these changes already, though we will still be able to create BMMs until July 2021. However, BMMs will have, according to Google, already have undertaken the role of phrase match already, which if you've got phrase match and BMMs in your account, if BMMs are actually starting to act like phrase already, then this can result in duplicated keywords in your account and also limit the amount of data density that you've got going on as well. Cool. So what do we need to do? Google recommends that we don't change BMMs to phrase matches in the short terms, as BMMs will continue to serve, but with phrases functionality. So if we edit these BMM keywords to phrase, then we'll eliminate any data that we will have gained. So editing or deleting and creating a new keyword gets rid of all the past data that you've got from your BMM keywords since you launched those keywords over the past few months or years. Google will be bringing out tools to either transition them over at some point, or if you've got BMM and phrase, will likely recommend to pause your BMM keywords so as to avoid duplication itself. So what do I recommend you do? I recommend that you monitor your performance and you shift budgets where necessary, as you may see traffic fluctuate amongst keyword match types. On the right here, I've got an example of BMM on the top and phrase on the bottom with the same keyword. Kind of over the last few months, phrase has started incorporating a lot more of the search queries that BMM has, and we'll continue to see that kind of going into July. I would say look out for the recommendations for kind of actionable deletions of duplicates if you've got BMM or phrase, or wait for kind of Google to change, have recommendations which change BMM to phrase without losing your data, kind of in a similar way how Google is recommending you change BMMs to broad unmodifieds now. We'll be seeing something similar for BMMs to phrase. But essentially, if you've got just BMMs in your account and no phrase, I would say hold on, wait until these recommendations come out and switch them over. If you've got BMMs and phrase, maybe pause BMMs, but Google will start recommending that you pause them kind of pretty soon anyway. So the change isn't actually that that worrisome, as kind of they've already started incorporating those elements already, and it will help you kind of transition themselves. It's not like your BMM keywords will stop serving completely. However, be hot on your negatives. So Google claims that match types which have different orders in words will have the same meanings, but there are obviously so many niches in your different types of keywords that you need to kind of still be hot on your negatives in the short term, at least, while Google learns exactly what your product is. However, if we've got no BMMs, how are we going to grow our account? So BMMs are obviously a great way to find new search queries which convert, and then kind of add them as different match types in your account. But if we've got no BMMs, what do we do? That brings me on to broad unmodifieds, or as I like to call them, bums. So even kind of as recent as 6 months ago, this was a pretty terrible idea. And anyone who's been working in PPC for a while knows that broad unmodifieds, or bums, were so kind of broad that the search queries that they brought in were very kind of irrelevant and weren't even worth adding. And putting bums in your account basically was like throwing money down the drain. However, due to improvements in Google's algorithms, and under the right strategy, these are much, much better at capturing the right intent and converting users at similar CPAs. So they're a really, really good way of growing the account kind of in a profitable way. Yes, you might see a wobble for the first day or two, and you might see cost per clicks go down quite a lot, conversion rate go down, but generally kind of over time, it's a really good way to grow your account for kind of the same level of profitability. On the right here, I've got my account filtered, so it's just broad unmodified. You can see there that CPA is actually kind of more profitable than exact phrase and normal broad as well. However, when you do these, only use them. I can't stress this enough. Only use them in target CPA, max conversions, target ROAS, and maximize conversion value. Don't use it in a visibility-based strategy. Cool, so that's a lot of keywords. I've talked about finding the right context for search. So start integrating audiences within your account. Look at your first-party audiences and look at the third-party audiences, which Google deems those users to be likely a part of. And the reason I say this is as keywords become more vague, this could prove vital. And in the future, maybe keywords may be irrelevant. And we start targeting search like we do kind of display or video, where we target kind of audiences, topics, demographics, and so on. So get on your audiences now, look at kind of who's converting, integrate them into your search right now. So any shocks to the system, which do happen in a couple of years, you're ready for. And then finally, automation. I'll go into this a lot more in the next few slides, but work with it, not against it, but also don't submit to it. So there needs to be the human element where we provide the KPIs and we provide the structure. Then Google does the rest in its kind of smart algorithms within that. Cool. So structuring our search for success. How do we structure search? Data first. I would say everything needs to be kind of as data dense as possible to give Google the most information to be able to get your ads in front of the right person at the right time, and so on. So I would say there are 3 pillars to this. The first being a consolidated campaign structure. So this allows campaigns to be segmented by category, allowing your budget to be applied on a priority basis and individual KPIs and strategies to be utilized depending on the area. Within that, have your ad group split by keyword context, not match type, as this will kind of improve the overall ad relevance and the click-through rate, and you're focusing on the intent of the keyword and how to deliver the right ad and page to it, rather than splitting your ad groups by various niches and keyword match types. And again, qualifying your audiences, integrate your audiences within your search to give Google more data to optimize towards, but then also protecting yourself against any shocks to keywords kind of in the future. So consolidated campaigns. Before, we might have had campaigns split by match type, we might have had it split by device, we might have had it split by audience, and so on. The way forward is to not look at campaigns in this very granular method now, and to start trying to phase those splits out and bring them all together so that kind of everything is all in the same campaign, all your match types, your devices, your audiences, your dynamic search ads, and so on. And instead of using like individual keyword level bid adjustments and kind of device modifiers and so on, let Google do the hard work for you, and you focus your efforts kind of on growing the account contextually instead. Again, audience-centric targeting, identify your target audiences and integrate them into your account. And why do I say we need to have this consolidated structure and we need to have all these audiences integrated within it? It's because smart bidding, I know a lot of you might not like to hear it, but smart bidding is the way forward. And if you're not using smart bidding, you're going to get left behind, especially as you start to see the data which Google provides to you, for example, in your search query reports, start to diminish. So smart bidding takes all of the factors which you might have done traditionally kind of manually into consideration, be, device, time of day, day of week, smartphone, location, language, the actual query, the browser you're using, kind of everything. And it uses all of those factors. I think there are kind of over 100,000 individual factors per search, per user. And it takes all of those factors to determine the right bid to show to the right user based on their intent. Some of the smart bidding strategies that we might use within our consolidated structure is we've got visibility-based strategies, so maximize clicks, which work really well in kind of a given budget. So they're good for limited budget campaigns as they can drive CPC down quite a lot. And and also target impression share, which achieves a certain impression share or market share kind of at a certain page at the top. So that's really good for brand visibility or keywords that we need to achieve a certain amount of visibility for. However, I would suggest using these with a max CPC limit so as not to inflate your cost per clicks quite a lot. However, more importantly, for a consolidated structure, we look at the performance-based strategies. So target CPA and target ROAS, they achieve a certain input KPI and work really well for campaigns which are not limited by budget. Obviously, don't be too ambitious when you set those. Do it based on the CPA or the ROAS of the last 30 days, or what Google suggests. Or if you've got a limited budget, then maximize conversions, and maximize conversion works really well, as they can drive CPC, CPA, and ROAS kind of in the right direction pretty well. And again, these KPI-based strategies take all of those factors into consideration as possible. And if you've got a consolidated campaign with as much data in a smaller place as possible, then Google has a lot more to learn from, rather than splitting your campaigns very granularly. So you're splitting the data over multiple touch points rather than putting it all in one place. So what could that look like? Here's an example campaign structure. So our account, we've got our brand with our kind of visibility-based strategy of target impression share on there. And we've got our non-brand campaign called Tractors, because Tractors, why not? And under that campaign, we've got our performance-based strategy, target CPA, and then our ad groups, which have kind of all the match types in, as well as keywords which are of the same intent as the other keywords in the account. If the keywords are different enough and they're going to a different URL, then we might want to put them in a different ad group because they're a different intent. But if they're kind of synonymous with each other, and I'm assuming that big and huge tractors are synonymous with each other, then we want to put them in the same ad group to get as much data in that location as possible. Generally, if they're going to the same URL, we want those within the same ad group to make our campaigns as data dense as possible. Again, there's a really good blog called the Hager-Cure method, which is very similar to this, and it's basically about grouping your ad groups by URLs and kind of splitting your campaigns by either category or KPI and letting smart bidding do the rest of the work. So at this point, you might be asking, but how do you maintain control in your campaigns when everything is kind of brought together? So we maintain control by setting our own KPIs, grouping the keywords together based on our own discretion. If something is different enough to be in its own ad group, make it so. I'm not saying kind of throw everything into the same ad group and let Google just do the work. You still need your own context. You still need your own discretion and your own human kind of knowledge to split ad groups in the right way. So if it's different enough, make it so. That's fine. Embrace your close variants. If something comes in as a plural or a misspelling and it still converts, it's probably still relevant, so leave it. If something's not relevant in your close variants and it appears enough to show in your search query data, then we can still negative it. We need to focus on qualifying our users elsewhere rather than very, very minute differences in their keywords themselves. And finally, consolidation and smart bidding will likely move towards any demographic, device, time changes, and so on that you'd make anyway, but it makes it more profitable. If you really don't want to show ads to a particular device or during a particular time of day, then a minus 100% bidding modifier will kind of get rid of those completely. So for example, for a lead gen client, you might not want to show on weekends. However, if you've got things like offline conversion set up and value-based bidding, i.e. target ROAS, then Google will learn that anyway, and it won't show ads during those times. And if it does, it will bid very, very low so that any leads that you do get will come at a much, much kind of lower CPA than you might expect during a peak time. So Google will know that information through context anyway. So how does this affect those changes in the PPC landscape that I was talking about? So grouping match types together due to lack of variance between match types eliminates having unnecessary double serving and diminishing data, which we do not want in our new structure. If we know our audience, then we know what we're looking for. So grouping similar keywords together by context and focusing efforts on writing engaging headlines to qualify our users instead is a really good way to grow the account through that way. Embracing bums within smart bidding context and integrating with the new phrase to achieve performance and growth of the account, so we can still grow our account in a really, really good way. It's probably easier to grow our account now with these new match types than it was previously. And then finally, data-dense campaigns and ad groups provides Google with the data to do the work, so we can focus our efforts on more contextual tasks and growing the account kind of in different ways with new new headlines and ad copy, new channels, and so on. So further changes, how do we safeguard against them? I talked about future-proofing your campaigns, and that's what we are doing with the structure. Exact match, you've changed, you used to be cool. So some other methods, DSA campaigns can capture your high intent keywords without having to navigate changes in keyword match types so much. So I'd suggest having DSA ad groups in your campaigns. Automated strategies will start learning which queries to optimize towards. So any kind of changes in these keywords in the future won't be as much of a shock to the system. And then finally, creating kind of rich first party audiences to assess who our user is and what keywords we should be targeting, and what users we should be targeting, puts us in a right position for an ever-increasing contextual-based targeting within PPC, which again, I'm sure is the way of the future. And I think in 2 years, the way we look at keywords might be, either irrelevant or non-existing compared to how we look at them now. Cool. Finally, very quickly, I'll talk about optimizing and reacting. You're probably thinking, oh, if we have everything kind of grouped together, then how do we how do we improve the account when Google's doing all the smart bidding for you? So first, setting up and basic optimization within an automated strategy. If you're setting up using target CPA or a ROAS, if you've got an uncapped budget, then use either the recommended target or the average performance over the last 30 days. If you've got a limited budget, then max conversions is a really strong one. And also, if your campaign has kind of less than 15 conversions in the last 30 days, this is a good way to get those conversions quickly, and then either stick with that strategy or move over to a target CPA and target ROAS. Target impression share and max clicks, please God, use a CPC limit. Otherwise, your cost per clicks could inflate pretty dramatically. So please use a cost per click limit, which is probably 2 times what your average cost per click is. Optimizing that. So we need to, if you want your campaign to be less aggressive, then you increase the target. If you're putting a higher target CPA, then Google is more kind of picky about the ads that it shows to users and is a lot more careful with its bidding. So if we want to make it less aggressive, we increase the target CPA. If we want to make it more aggressive, then we reduce the target CPA or the target ROAS, as Google will accept a lower base and therefore bid kind of more aggressively for those terms. If you're getting quite a low target CPA, which is below your target anyway, then kind of increase your target CPA further, which sounds odd, but it will give Google kind of a higher threshold of what it bids towards. So you'll actually, your CPA might go up, but you'll get a lower CPA for your account on average, which is interesting. And finally, if your budget increases, consider a move from max conversions to a target strategy. And if it decreases, consider a move from target CPA to max conversions. Cool. A couple of niches within that. So what if you're seeing a very short spike in kind of conversion rate changes? So for example, Black Friday. So if you're expecting your conversion rate to double over a very short period of time, halve your expectation. So for example, double your target CPA. So Google bids twice as aggressively, but if your conversion rate doubles, then your CPA will level out at the same, but you'll get more volume for that CPA in that very short period. And then kind of immediately after the event ends, put your target CPA back to normal or more strict than before, just to kind of level it out afterwards. Cool. And finally, if you need to halve or double your budget, consider switching your strategy, as I mentioned, from kind of a very aggressive one like max conversions to target CPA or vice versa. Or recently, and I know it pains me to say this, but Google's recommendations are actually pretty good. It gives you actual actionable suggestions where it says, your conversion value can increase this much if you adjust your target ROAS, either halve or, increasing it. And generally those recommendations are pretty sound, as I think Google could probably get in a bit of hot water if they weren't sound and they were just making it up. Cool. So I've talked about all the changes that have happened recently, how to react to them, how to structure our campaigns kind of to deal with these changes, and how to safeguard against future changes. The answer is data density, consolidation, and smart bidding. But then also how to, maintain control within that, and then finally how to optimize that strategy kind of within that new smart structure. I imagine there's some questions, but yeah, please kind of save them to the end. Thank you for listening. I think that was the quickest I've spoken in a half an hour period in my life. And I will hand over to my brother, Luke, because apparently we look the same, but I don't see it.
This is, yeah, I think the hair situation has probably got a lot to say about that. Well, thanks, Greg. It's really interesting, right? When we started talking about doing this presentation together, we hadn't spoken in a couple of years since meeting at a conference, and we'd basically come to really, really similar conclusions about all of these things, about the changes to the way people search, changes to the way Google responds, and how we might want to deal with them. I think my screen should now be showing in present mode, so I'll dive right in. Greg, maybe you could be described to have taken kind of like a top-down approach, talking really about the structure and how we might want to change that and use the new changes to Google to our advantage. I'm going to talk, let's say, from a bottom-up approach. If we have a structure already, or if we want to change our structure, how are we going to be able to add keywords to this structure in a way that is actually going to help? Now, I don't know if you can actually see my screen in present mode now. Greg, what is that looking like to you?
I can still see your slides on the side.
Cool. Okay, this is an interesting one. Well, if no one objects, we could just go through like that. Can you see the next slide now? Yeah, okay. Cool. Apologies for my bad note taking at the bottom. Hopefully we can make this big enough for everybody to see. So yeah, I'm Luke, I'm from Emma, and today I would like to share with you 5 key questions that we use to get closer to good keywords karma. So what do I mean by that? I mean, we want to find a balance. I think this is one of the big takeaways for me from Greg's talk. We want to have some keywords in there for sure, but we don't maybe want to have too many. And we want to be a little bit more picky about which keywords we have and how we use them, because the way in which we use them is starting to change. I really like this idea of thinking about a keyword as a way of clustering search terms together, rather than necessarily trying to match every single search individually. So hopefully these questions will help you get a little bit closer to your dream Google Ads account. Before we dive in, a little bit of context on Emma. We are a global sleep brand. We sell mattresses and a whole load of other innovative sleep enhancing products because it turns out sleep is quite important. That's kind of the thing. The science is kind of pretty decided on that sleep is good. The company Emma was founded here in Frankfurt in 2013. That's where I am today. So good afternoon to anyone here in Germany or anyone else in the world who's joining from a different time zone. The company actually only had a very small amount of investment, I think maybe 5 or 10 million euros, something like that, but was already profitable after a few years, and by 2019 was generating about 200 million euros in revenue from the overall business. By the end of 2020, this had grown to about 400 million euros. So really growing very fast and growing very globally. We are about 600 people now. The average age is about 29, I think, based on the last data point I heard maybe a couple of months ago. We're active in about 30 countries. Again, can't quite keep track. And we have offices here in Frankfurt, where I'm based. And as you can see, according to Google, this is one of the best places in the world to live. We also have offices in Manila, Lisbon, Shanghai. If you might be interested in living in one of these fantastic places, we are actually hiring at the moment. So the team.emma-sleep.com, that's our hiring website if you're interested. More specifically about me, I've spent the last 5 years up to my elbows in Google Ads accounts working for different agencies, the last 3 years in Italy and Tuscany, and a couple of years before that in Manchester. The last 5 months have been here at Emma, where I really cannot express how much fun I've had since joining the team here. We've really challenged how and why we do Google Ads, and it's already as you've seen, quite a successful company, very much driven by Google Ads performance. And this is really what's led to these questions that I'm talking about today. We've been rethinking how and why we would want to use keywords. We are a very young company, as I mentioned, but actually I'm very averagely aged compared to the average Emma, it turns out. I'm very average. This is fine. I'm okay with this. So this is what you'll get today. First of all, I'll give you a quick overview of what are the 5 questions and who are they for, when might you want to use them. Then we'll take a look at the 5 questions for good keyword karma. These are questions to ask yourself when you want to create a new keyword in your account. After that, the 3rd section, we'll look at some quick examples of using those questions in the real world. And finally, we'll look at how we might want to test if our keywords, changes to keywords, are actually helping our overall performance. If you've seen Greg's talk and you've been inspired to change your account, then I think these might be questions you will be asking yourselves as well too. So what are these 5 questions for? Well, keywords are still a big lever for performance. One of the big takeaways was from Greg's talk that keywords have changed, Google Ads has changed. However, keywords are still absolutely fundamental to getting those sales, getting those conversions from Google Ads. They're still going to have a big impact on performance, especially if your account is new, if you've launched new campaigns, new products recently. We're still going to see this, right? That's not changed. If we've got a fresh thing going live, we're probably going to want to add some new keywords sooner or later. We'll make some changes there. And perhaps if you yourself are very new to Google Ads and you haven't added keywords to an account before, these might be a really useful starting place for you to really think about what you want to do in that account. There may be people watching here who have got actually a shitload of Google Ads experience, people who have been working with big accounts in the past and perhaps are starting to think about moving to a less granular structure, something like Greg was suggesting here. And I think these questions could be quite useful for that. It will really help us rethink, okay, do I really have an extra benefit from adding a keyword to our account? These rules at least could become rules, these questions could become rules if we want to start to automate more of our keyword creation. They could form a basis for tests, for applying thresholds if we want to automate, because I don't think automation is dead either. Google is taking over a lot of the automation, but I think there are still opportunities to add automation on top of that, and adding keywords is still one way we could increase performance in an automated manner. To try and be transparent here, I think these questions are going to be account structure agnostic. Based on the examples we've looked at, they're going to work for a SCAG account, a single keyword per ad group, a STAG account, a single theme per ad group, or similar sort of more modern structures like Hakagure, as Greg was talking about. These questions are going to be applicable to all match types, phrase, exact, or a bums keyword. They're going to be relevant whichever bidding type you're using, although perhaps you would want to set different thresholds. You would maybe have a different level of when it's adding value to add a keyword based on the bidding that you're using. I'm going to put this disclaimer in there. Perhaps it is going to be the case in a few rare situations that there's not going to be a perfect answer from using these questions. In which case, I want to know, please do start thinking about these questions. And if there are cases that you're working on that these don't apply to, you can make the notes in the comments. We'll come back to these once I've gone through these questions themselves. So let's take a look at the 5 key questions for good keyword karma. How can you bring peace and balance to your Google Ads? Well, really, it's just one question. And that is kind of the question we deal with all the time every day is the impact greater than the effort? Is the time and mental effort that I'm putting into doing this action going to be profitable, right? It's ROI. It's the, I don't know, return on actual work done, spent. That's not a thing. I can't rework ROAS. That's fine. Effort in, effort out. And I don't just mean the effort of creating the keyword. This is super easy. Like you type in one sentence, you click a button, it's fine, right? You created the keyword. But how much effort is it going to be to monitor this keyword, to see if it's competing with other keywords? How much effort is it going to be to manage our negatives and to make sure search terms are going to the right place? What we've seen from Greg's talk is that this is actually getting harder. So maybe that effort is not really worth it anymore. So this is an interesting question. How can we go about answering this question? Well, I'd like to bring us back to some philosophy of science. We like to think of marketing as a scientific endeavor these days. And I think that one of the core concepts of scientific theory, falsifiability, is actually going to help us here. So this is an idea from Karl Popper, who wrote about this first in 1934. And he came up with this concept that a scientific hypothesis is not true. Actually, all it does is it makes a claim that can be proven false. It makes a claim about the world, and it is possible in theory to go out into the world and prove that that theory is not true. The good theories, of course, are theories that make claims that have not yet been proven false. A famous example of this are swans, right? It would be very sensible if you've grown up in Europe to say all swans are white. This is a very sensible claim. However, if you went out into the world and found a black swan, it would be easy to prove that that claim is wrong. And in fact, there are black swans in, I think, New Zealand or Australia or something. So in this situation, it's actually easier to prove something wrong than actually it is to prove something is true. And we shouldn't really think about things as being true, only as yet to be proven wrong. This means we can answer our main question in two different ways. Is the impact going to be greater than the effort? Well, the positive way of answering this question would be to prove that there will be an impact if we create a keyword. I think this is quite hard in general. If the last year and a half has taught us anything, it's that predicting the future is not that easy. So perhaps it's going to be tricky for us to prove the impact of adding a new keyword to our account. The other way of thinking about this, the falsifiability way of thinking about this would be, well, can we prove that there will not be an impact if we create a new keyword in our account? Because if we try to prove that there is not an impact and we cannot prove that there is an impact, perhaps this is a more effective way of answering that question, a more scientific way of answering that question. Let's look at how these might apply to our questions. Because in short, the 5 questions for good keyword karma are these. Number 1, is there a low chance of this new keyword being a close variant? Number 2, does it capture incremental traffic? Number 3, do we want to show a different message for a subset of search terms? Number 4, will we have enough data to see distinct performance? And number 5, our original question, the only one that really matters, is the impact greater than the effort? I'd propose these questions as a good way to start thinking about, is the impact greater than the effort? Those first 4 questions are designed to really get us to think about what are the possible benefits, because if the answer is no to all 5 of these questions, then have we proven we do not need this keyword? I think we can say this. If we say no to all 5 of these questions for this new keyword, keyword X that we want to create, we should not create this keyword. This is not necessarily going to be a perfect solution for telling us when we should create a keyword, but if we can rule out 80% of keywords as definitely not, then that leaves us with a much smaller and much more achievable job of fine-tuning which keywords we do create out of what's left. Let's take a quick look at some of these in action. First of all, is there a chance of this keyword being a close variant? On the left here, we can see someone might be searching for something like best mattress. Obviously, an Emma mattress would be very near the top of the page because it's an amazing mattress. Now, the keywords that could match this are obviously going to be things like best mattress and exact, and we would probably have this in our account. One of the trends that we've seen over the last few years is the rise of people searching for things related to best, because people trust what Google shows them when they're searching for things that are the best. However, do we need to have these other close variants? So the best mattress, this is a close variant that would match this search term because it includes stop words like the, other stop words might be ah. There are other close variants that would match, such as plurals, best mattresses, even keywords with a different word order, such as mattress best. Best mattress is a misspelling, and all of these are super close variants. There is not going to be a huge amount of benefit to adding these if they're just going to capture the same search term and compete against each other very, very closely. The one at the bottom here, good mattress. Well, this is same meaning, so it is possible that this keyword could trigger for this search term. I would say it might be worth having this keyword in the account, actually. I think this one is borderline, and that's because I think it's less likely to be a close variant, but this is going to depend on your account. Maybe based on the bidding and structure that you have, this would be very different, maybe it wouldn't. Moving on to the second question, does this keyword add incremental traffic? Let's think about a keyword like mattress and phrase. Well, quite often we would have a low impression share when we have this keyword in our account. So maybe we would want to add a slightly longer tail keyword like memory foam mattress. Now, based on our historic data, it would be easy for me to see, and this is actually the case, that these keywords have a much higher average conversion value per click. Basically, they have a higher conversion rate, maybe they have a higher average order value as well. And this means that we should be bidding more on this keyword than for mattress by itself. Whether we're using smart bidding or manual bidding, probably we should and will bid more for this keyword. So we can drive incremental traffic by adding this keyword to our account, because we would have a higher bid for memory foam mattress. We would capture more of those memory foam mattress search terms than we would with having a low bid on mattress by itself. There is a possibility we can drive incremental traffic with this keyword. This next keyword, memory mattress, this probably isn't going to drive incremental traffic. Now, in our account, we would see that actually most of the people searching for the words memory and the word mattress also use the word foam. In fact, almost everyone using the word memory also uses the word mattress and also uses the word foam. So this isn't going to drive extra revenue. It's not going to drive extra traffic because we're already capturing all of those clicks with our memory foam mattress keyword. While this might appear to be slightly broader, we're still going to capture any search terms that are memory mattress. Best memory mattress, that's not a thing, right? So the word mattress by itself would make sure that we do still capture any other stragglers that aren't going to be caught by this keyword. The next rule, or the next question, is do we want to show a different message for a subset of search terms? I think this is a really interesting example. I liked Greg's example of big tractors versus small tractors. Even if we see differences in performance, we could still, or very similar performance, we would still want to split into ad groups so we can tailor our messaging. For example, if someone is searching for the word mattress, we're going to say something like, we sell mattresses in the UK, we've won loads of awards, it's made in the UK, which has recommended us, all this kind of stuff. So probably we're going to have this keyword in our account. But we would also want to have a keyword for something like spring mattress. This is actually a subcategory of mattress. It's quite a different product. And we would probably want to say, we sell spring mattresses if someone is searching for a spring mattress. We would want to send people to the subcategory page, the landing page for spring mattresses, rather than to send them to the home page that has spring mattresses, but also other kinds of mattresses, such as a foam mattress. So foam mattress would also be very worth adding as a keyword so that we can put it in a separate ad group, so that we can make sure it has a more relevant ad copy and a more relevant landing page. Quality score is still a thing. We can still improve our click-through rate by tailoring the ad copy. We can still improve our conversion rate by sending people to the right landing page. This is like the basics of Google Ads. This has not changed. I do think we need to think about how granular we go, because how often do we actually really need to change the message? We don't have to change the message just to necessarily stuff in extra keywords into that ad copy. An example like mattress UK, well, this is a keyword that has a significant amount of search volume, but realistically, we're probably going to use the same ads that we are using for our main mattress keywords anyway. So if we're going to use the same ad copy, if we're going to send people to the main category level page showing all of our kinds of mattresses, we don't necessarily need to create it as a separate keyword to send those search terms to a different place. If we don't want to show a different ad, we may not need to create a keyword. Question number 4 is, will we ever have enough data to see a distinct performance? Are we ever going to be able to see this keyword performing better or worse than other keywords? Well, let's take a quick look, because we can always have a look in Keyword Planner, right? We don't just have to rely on our historical data. If we have an idea for a new keyword, we can go and check in Keyword Planner. It's not necessarily going to be perfect, super accurate data to the exact number of searches, but it should give us a rough idea. Is it ever going to have some volume, or is it unlikely to ever get there? Possibly we would want to set a fairly arbitrary threshold. For example, we might want to add the keyword best beds for side sleepers. Fine, maybe this is a keyword that can drive us some revenue. Perhaps we can see it's going to have a better performance than average. But with 110 searches per month, even at 100% impression share, even with a 10% click-through rate, even with a 5% conversion rate, which in our account is very realistic for a search term like this, we would still only be getting something like 6 conversions a year. Is this a statistically significantly different conversion rate to a different keyword? I'm not sure that's enough data to really say. We know that our conversion rate fluctuates massively month to month, week to week sometimes. So having this data at a granular level is not super helpful. maybe there's a different reason for creating this keyword. But if we don't have enough data, for example, the 6-inch mattress, we're going to have probably a couple of conversions per year from adding this keyword at best. Are we going to gain useful insights from that data? Probably not. This is very strongly tied to the changes in search behavior that Greg mentioned. Even if we look at all of the generic mattress keywords, the non-branded mattress keywords that Keyword Planner suggests for the UK, there's only about 300 that are over 100 average monthly searches. I think this puts into context how many keywords we might want to have in our account. 300 being, very much the upper limit of what we would need to cover those searches if some of those are phrase match. How many keywords do we really need to have in our account? Well, if they're low data, probably we don't need to have them. So let's revisit our final question. Is the impact greater than the effort? Well, by answering these first 4 questions, have we been able to show the negative answer? Have we proven that there will not be an impact if we create this keyword? Because if the answer is no to all of these questions so far, I would like to make the statement that yes, we have proven that there is not going to be a positive impact from creating this new keyword. Possibly we found a black swan. Possibly we've said yes to one of these questions, in which case maybe we do want to add that keyword to our accounts. If this is the situation, then we want to be very careful about where and how and why we create that keyword, and we probably want to take into account some of the questions along the way. So these, in a nutshell, are going to help us understand from the bottom up how to build our keywords into one of these new structures that we might want to have. Of course, this is, as we mentioned, a scientific approach to marketing, so we shouldn't just necessarily take Greg on blind faith, although I think he's right. We should always test this within our very specific account. So how are we going to test these keywords and find out if they are actually helping? Well, I think it's quite difficult just to show an impact just from adding keywords to the account. Keywords are going to keep competing with each other, as Greg mentioned. We probably can't see 20% of the search times, sometimes more. Trying to get search terms to go to the right place and stop keywords outbidding each other, especially with different bid strategies, absolute nightmare. This is a Canutian task, I believe. The story of King Canute, who tried to stop the tide coming in by telling it, hey, just stop. I feel like us trying to tell Google to behave is a kind of a similar level of impact effort. So how can we make sure that our keywords aren't going to compete against each other? I can think of 2 main reasons or 2 main ways we can try and test our keywords in a way where we're not going to have our keywords directly competing with each other. This is going to help us understand which group of keywords are actually helping. Number 1, where we have a single campaign, is to do a campaign experiment, the classic Google A/B split test. This is going to work if we have one single mattress campaign, all of our mattress keywords are in one campaign. This campaign is not competing with other campaigns. It's maybe not competing with our branded competitors or our branded own trademark because we've set up very clear negative keywords. In this situation, we could take our campaign, we could set up a campaign experiment and use different keywords because we don't really care necessarily about the performance of each individual keyword. What we care about is the overall result. If you're skeptical about Greg's claims, have a go, right? Launch a campaign experiment, launch a single bums keyword. In our case, this would be mattress in broad unmodified, and see what happens. It doesn't have to be a big risk. We can launch an experiment with a very small proportion of our budget. Maybe we do this for a small segment for a less important campaign. Does it work? We still need to get some data, so maybe we still need enough data for smart bidding, but have a go, see what happens. This isn't an approach that's going to work for everyone, because in many cases, we might have multiple campaigns that would potentially be competing with our new campaign. I'm talking about this at campaign level because I think this is the easiest way to test this. It would possibly be interesting to think about this at ad group level as well, but I think it's nice and easier to run the test at campaign level, even if we have different ad groups. So in this example, maybe we have an old, more granular account, and we might have one mattress campaign. Maybe this is for a device, maybe this is for exact match, maybe it's for phrase match, whatever the split is. Maybe these keywords didn't used to compete with each other in the past, but maybe they are now. And if we want to switch to a less granular structure, how can we test this against that? Well, we would maybe want to only have one new campaign, so we can't do a normal campaign split test, right? Because if we had a campaign split test for the first campaign, we would still be competing against the second and third campaigns. In this situation, the Geo Split Test is a very good way of getting useful insights. This is actually exactly what we're doing at Emma in Australia at the moment. We are running a new structure on a small part of the country, the state of Victoria, which looks tiny here on the map, but it's actually about a third of revenue, because a third of the revenue comes from Melbourne, a third of the revenue comes from Sydney. I'm not sure what's in the middle of Australia there, like spiders or something, but they don't buy mattresses that much. So we can actually get really useful and relatively low risk data by testing a different set of new keywords against a more granular and already quite high performing campaign structure. These are two ways in which we can test new groups of keywords. Time for a very quick recap. These are the 5 questions for good keyword karma. Take a screenshot now, download the slides later and print them on every wall in your flat. Tattoo them on the side of your arm. Let me know how well you get on with using them. The first question was, is there a low chance of being a close variant? Is it going to compete with existing keywords and compete for the same search terms? Number 2, does it capture incremental traffic? Are we going to have a higher impression share on existing traffic, or is it going to capture new products or categories that maybe we weren't reaching at all before? Number 3, do we want to show a different message for a subset of our search terms? There are certainly going to be cases where we can identify a word that does tell us what the user wants, does tell us what they're searching for. And in this situation, we can tell them that that's what we have and send them to a page that has the answer to their question. This is what Google loves. This is what customers love. This is what we love. Question number 4, will we have enough data to see distinct performance? Well, if it's going to be super low volume anyway, probably we're never going to learn anything useful, because by the time we have enough data, that data is going to be so out of date anyway, there's no action we can take. The visibility of performance is changing anyway. We need to think about this in a different way to how we might have done it in the past. Number 5, the final and most important question, is the impact of creating this keyword going to be greater than the effort of creating it, monitoring it, and optimizing it on an ongoing basis? If we said no to the first 4 questions, probably it's going to be a no to the final question as well. And if the answer is no to all 5 questions, have we proven that we do not need the keyword? This is the question I would like to leave you with. Please let me know what your answers are. And if any of this has been interesting, this approach that we've taken, how we developed this, how we're implementing it has been interesting to you, I would like to ask you something else. Is there the possibility that you might find your dream job at Emma? We're currently hiring for about 41 positions in marketing alone, junior ones, senior ones, paid media, paid social, tons of stuff. Let us know what might be interesting to you. Let me know directly. Feel free to reach out to me at luke.milbourn@emmasleep.com if you do have any questions about any of this. So thanks for watching this. I hope these questions are helpful. And I guess we might still have time for a few questions. If Greg has found anything interesting to talk about, which I'm sure there is. So what would you like to start with next?
Well, thanks, Luke. That was really interesting. And thanks especially for using the phrase bums. If people take anything away from these talks, I want them to start using bums as a word in their everyday PPC vocabulary. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions, put them in the comments now, or if you think of any later. We've both got our respective Twitter handles or emails that we've put up, so please feel free to send us a question. We've got one question now from Lauren Capon. When beginning to test bums in your campaigns, do you recommend splitting these into separate campaigns like with BMM? Should you choose your top performing 10 to 20% keywords to test first? I think there's a few things to kind of address here. I would say the first, if you are splitting your campaigns through exact BMM, then launch bums in the campaign which you've got your BMMs running, because they're going to have the same KPI. We want them within the same campaign. There's no use splitting them out. Personally, I wouldn't have exact and BMMs in the same campaign, consolidation and all that. But if you've got them split out, yes, launch bums in your BMM campaign. In regards to which keywords you should test first, I wouldn't necessarily recommend testing your top 10 to 20%, as if you get a lot of volume through them and a lot of conversions, then you might see a bit of fluctuation in the short term. what I would do is I would start testing maybe the mid ones, kind of which perform kind of in the middle, maybe the ones at the bottom, and slowly move your way up. A really good way to test these quickly is if you look in your Google recommendations, which again is something which has everyone rolling their eyes, but Google does recommend which BMMs to change into bums and what you'll achieve through them. So for example, it would be like you can achieve X amount more conversions and X amount more clicks for Y amount more spend. I would generally say those are a really good method to slowly integrate bums into your account. But kind of to answer your question, I probably wouldn't go top 10 to 20. I would go for ones which get a decent volume so you can see the impact, but won't kind of affect your account and won't cause too many fluctuations until you're comfortable with having them in your account within the right strategy, and launch them within the same campaigns as you've got your BMMs in, as in theory they should be achieving what BMMs did 6 months ago, which is, you know, the KPI of whatever you've got for those keywords, and also growing your account in a profitable way, which is what BMMs used to do. Anything to add, Luke? Or...
I'm interested by this. I think there's going to be a lot of fun playing around with these in the future. I would ask, how much does the word length, the number of words in the keyword, help? So in the tractor example, would you start off with tractor by itself, or maybe would you start off with a 2-word or a 3-word bums keyword? Bums.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say whatever you're doing within your BMM keywords, go with that. So for even BMM tractors is very broad in itself, so you might not have that in your account. If you do have that in your account and it's working well for you, then there's no reason why unmodified tractors would work as well. I imagine if you did have a tractors campaign, I know nothing about tractors. I don't know why I chose tractors as an example. But if you did have a tractors campaign with like best tractors, then use your bum as best tractors rather than just tractors, because you're going from fairly broad to really broad. Go for the same level of broad within a different match type. Essentially, we want to move our BMMs over to bums and basically just take the pluses out of them kind of over time without getting rid of our data. Cool.
I have a question regarding bums. I think going into a more granular structure from one word in one campaign in bums, what about using bums to tailor our messaging? Do you think that there are going to be any issues with having, say, 2 ad groups with big tractors and small tractors? For me, I would expect Google is probably going to do a fairly good job of sending the right search terms to the right ad group, even if they are super broad. Maybe there are people searching for, is a big tractor better than a small tractor? I'd imagine Google's going to work out which is the best place to send that after a while. Does that sound like a sensible approach?
Yeah, I think what I was talking about with like grouping your ad groups by themes, and then having ad copy which is relevant to all the possible search queries which you see in that theme, is the right way to do this. So yeah, splitting out by big tractors and small tractors. If you get something synonymous with big tractors like massive, I don't know, another word for tractors, then the ad copy which you've got for that keyword in that ad group is still going to be relevant to what Google sends, to which ad Google sends to each search query. So if you look at ad groups within keyword themes, so I think you call it stags, then in theory your ad copy should be relevant to kind of every search query within that, be it with exact keywords or be it on the complete other end of the scale with bum keywords, because Google is clever and it does know kind of the context and the intent of what users are actually searching.
And I think this, we should also keep in mind that it doesn't necessarily mean Google is going to be perfectly accurate 100% of the time. Maybe there is still a search term that does include the word small tractor in that big ad group occasionally, but probably it's going to be like a few impressions, a couple of clicks. And in this sort of situation, just because Google has made possibly a mistake, that doesn't mean we need to go back to a super granular scan structure. It doesn't mean that we can do any better by doing things manually and trying to force it to take control.
Yeah, like I said, if it's getting enough impressions and clicks for it to be of a worry, it will still appear within those kind of the 80% of the search terms which you do see. And negative keyword management is never going to go away. That's still important kind of as long as keywords exist. And yeah, there are probably going to be fluctuations as Google learns, and in 6 months we'll probably be saying bums are incredible, use them in everything. Whereas now I'm saying bums are pretty good, test them, start putting in your account. But yeah, still be hot on your negative keywords. I'm not just don't just put a broad keyword in an ad group and go on holiday for 3 weeks, or do. I'm not your boss. Cool. I think we should wrap it up there, because I feel like me and you could talk for probably hours about these keywords. If anyone has any other questions, yeah, please just let us know. Hope you enjoyed it. I think the slides are being sent out on a blog on the Impression site, so keep an eye out for that if you want to have a read through them kind of after this. But yeah, thanks for joining, everyone, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and goodbye.